Okay, so what I'd like to do is to reconvene the Prudential Committee. All board members present before we went to recess are again present, so we are ready to begin. And first item I need to make mention of is we have the Recreation Governance Study Committee update, and within that agenda topic, I would like to add 2 additional subtopics to discuss the agreement that the PC has with the trustees regarding EJRP, and also to discuss possible actions the PC can take with regarding Park Street School. Okay? So, without further ado, are there any visitors and or staff to be heard? You're just here to watch tonight. Okay, excellent. So, and also, I would like to, I know in the overall meeting, Patrick had a moment to introduce himself, and I just want to welcome him to his first meeting with the Prudential Committee.
Hi again, everyone. Who I haven't met, I'll try to touch base before we all leave here tonight. But
yeah. So, if you guys have just a quick moment, just to say hello to Patrick today.
Tom, I know. I've been in his office before with my daughter, so.
Oh, okay.
She's a live wire.
I just introduce myself to Patrick.
Hi, Patrick. Dan Ryan,
Hi, Dan.
Fleming School.
New like me,
Yeah.
right?
Great. We've met
I just
Paul.
had the pleasure.
Great. Well, welcome. And also welcome to Jen. Maybe each of the board members can introduce themselves to you.
Sure. Well, I'm Michael Smith. I'm the board chair. You are coming in absent my children. They are going out at the same time. So again, I do have the opinion that they are continuing to cause the retirements that have occurred over the years, to include.
It happens
Lori's.
at every school.
Yes, it does.
Not at Fleming.
At Fleming.
Not at Fleming.
Not
I
at
know.
all.
Well, Dan just has just some intestinal fortitude that the others didn't have. So, thank you.
Jason DeRosa. I'm my vice chair now.
Yes, you're vice chair.
So someday, depending how long you're there, if you make it for 12 years, you'll see all 3 of my kids. They're 4th kindergarten, or 4th going in 4th, 1st, and 2.5.
Excellent.
Marla Durham.
And Pat Murray.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, now that we all know each other a little bit better, we have an opportunity for all of our principals to talk about some of the successes we've had this past year.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, and so the principals created a collaborative PowerPoint presentation, so it'll be more streamlined instead of each principal going through each aspect. I think they've done a wonderful job, and I'll turn it over to whomever's going to be the narrator for the lead.
Thank you, Judy. So over the last few years, EJ principals have come together and collaborated on a joint presentation, as Judy has indicated, and we are doing so this year. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and make that connection with our Prudential Committee. And then do I just click and press? Okay. So in terms of our outline, each school has one slide, and we'll speak to the bullets as outlined on our respective slides regarding accomplishments, school action plan highlights, challenges that we faced, the upcoming 2.5 days of work days in terms of our foci for that time. And then Suzanne is going to provide a retrospective of our joint school safety work. Oops. Maybe I'm clicking the... Oh, there we go. Okay. This is an overview of our respective profiles within EJ. And we're not going to go through these columns. This is really for your consideration. And I think, Judy and Ben, have you guys shared this with the Prudential Committee in terms of being able to look at it or?
No, I don't think we had it ahead of time.
So that's something that Judy can do, is to share this document with the board.
Remind me what SES stands for?
Socioeconomic
Lori?
status.
Okay.
Will we be able to share this with the board as a Google presentation? Because you probably noticed where it says the percentages, it says winter 2016, it's because we're still trying to gather and input our spring data. So I'd love it if you had access to this, because I think all of us will probably be updating it with the current data at the end of the school year. So it'd be nice for you to be able to see the updates. This is winter data, so it's really not reflecting the end of the year.
And we won't have the science data really until the fall.
Right.
So what's nice about it is it's a framework that can be updated, and you can track the updates as they move along. So we'll see if we can make that.
And for those board members who have been privy to the regular principal reports that have been framed really from our respective school action plans, all of this really should be familiar, should look familiar. And I think we haven't had a conversation, but I think we're anticipating that as we move into 2016, 2017, Judy, we follow a similar effort in terms of trying to better align our reporting out to the Prudential Committee per our school action plan, per some sort of dovetailing with our trimester work, and then also when those assessments cycle around.
Tom brings up a really important point in that you're reducing the number of meetings that you're going to have for the coming year. And so the question is, you know, where are they aligned as far as when the schools actually have their data? So we're going to be working on that, but I think all of us would be open to any feedback you'd like to provide as far as the structure of the principal's report and if it met your needs for this year, and any suggestions on how you'd like to see things differently if there is anything.
So again, this chart, we're not going to go through cell by cell, but certainly if you have any questions, you can forward those through Judy's office to any other principals. And Suzanne.
Great. So big year at Summit Street School with Bridges Mathematics, really successful implementation for year one of Bridges Mathematics. It's a huge program with a lot of pieces and parts and an instructional framework, and very proud of the job the staff did in implementing the program. And of course, with any program, particularly one of this size, it's a multi-year implementation to fully feel the effects of it with students. Like, for example, if you're a third grader, you have obviously K-1-2 math instruction, but not the same programming and sort of dovetailing together in the same way. So we are really looking forward to year two. This is our, as Aaron sort of gave the prelude about PBIS, we're a positive behavior intervention and support school, which is a large statewide initiative to positive school climate. And we are in year two this year with a focus on tier 2 interventions, targeted interventions for students for behavior. And that targeted intervention continues. We are sending a team of 6 of us with a BEST grant to what's called BEST, so sort of the best PBIS sort of strategies that are going on throughout the state. That big conference is in 2 weeks. We have staff going to that. Increasing our tier 2 interventions, we're really proud of that we delivered intervention to not only every student who is, even if you are a fraction of a hair below the standard or just barely meeting the standard, you receive tier 2 interventions at Summit. And this year we added to it also providing that intervention to what we saw the previous year was our kindergartners who just barely made the standard. We found almost across the board 100% of them went below the standard coming back in first grade and then received tier 2 interventions. So this year with winter data, we responded to every kindergartner who just barely made the standard, all went to intervention since January of this year to get well above the standard before we had summer break. And with that comes the challenges of capacity for scheduling and intervention. With our Tier 2 targeted interventions comes our capacity as a system to provide emotional regulation strategies and supports for students. And our June work days, we have no shortage of things to do during June work days. And we have support services scheduling, grade level transitions. We make sure that we seamlessly move our students with all that information that we talked about earlier in the previous board meeting. We want to support our students and transfer that information well, our instructional alignment, our curriculum mapping. You know, on the half day, the first half day work session that we'll have, we're interviewing for 4 different support staff positions that we have open and running. And it is a gift to be able to have the volume of staff that will be able to participate in 4 different interview processes at the same time. So really appreciate it, and I think as at all of our buildings, it's a full couple of days.
So before you move on, just a question. I mean, as you have increased the amount of students, you said, with the reading intervention and the challenges, is there a place that you felt suffered because of it? Was there something that being able to
I
do
really
any kind
actually
of
did. I
emotional-
feel like we thought we were working really hard. We worked even harder, and I think that's what I'd say about the Summit Street staff. Really hardworking group that I think when you think there wasn't any more to give, they came up with more to give.
So you don't feel like something else suffered?
I think that we are always at capacity. I think that we always are in need, but I wouldn't say that anything suffered. I think we're still pushing math intervention at the same time. And
No, it's great to be able to help more kids. I just didn't know if capacity's limited, so did something else fall off? But it sounds like you're saying no.
I think they picked up every possible second of time.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Hiawatha. I would say we profile similarly to Summit Street, save for the PBIS piece. We do many of the PBIS strategies, and we take a lot of those PBIS pathways. We, as a faculty, a number of years ago, chose not to work through that formal process. That said, we've worked extremely hard this year, as Suzanne was sharing over at Summit. I would like to say to our Prudential committee that we have an amazing student body, an amazing group of families at Hiawatha who are incredibly compassionate and invested in our learning community. And I think I could say that really across Essex Junction. And my faculty and staff, again, I'm sure like Lori and Dan and Suzanne will share and did share, are incredibly dedicated and caring. And we have probably had the best year ever, at least in the years that I've been at Hiawatha. And I think that our faculty has really become very self-actualized. I think we're a much more mature staff. We've really grown together. We've overcome a lot of shortcomings. We still have things to work on, as you'll note, in terms of challenges. But I don't think, again, considering really all the schools in Essex Junction, that there's a better community of professionals that are really invested in making a difference for the children that live here. Our accomplishments, again, aligned with our school action plan highlights a demonstrative improvement in our MTSS survey results, which we just completed. We actually followed up on our student survey piece. We did not take that formal National School Climate Survey as we had the previous 3 years. We utilized a homegrown tool. Again, all the kids reported positive results. And looking at our actual school action plan, we've met or exceeded all of our goals, which we're very proud of. Challenges, it's complicated work to align what we're doing in classrooms with our adapted curricula. The English language arts piece, the mathematics piece, the next generation science standards, which are on deck, requires a tremendous amount of time, which is very difficult to to get and maintain. We, as you probably have heard now over the last year or so, last couple of years, we continue to struggle supporting children in a meaningful way who have very intensive needs. It's very, very challenging, and I'm not sure what where the answer is or what the answer is. I think looking at the opportunity that's coming up with our unified district might be a chance to have a more universal conversation with all the players around how we best support those kids. It's very time-consuming. It's complicated. It requires a tremendous amount of time, and I'm not sure that we really have the resources in place to sustain what we're trying to do. And kind of going along with that is the piece around mental health. Again, I'm looking around the table and I notice so many familiar faces. Thinking back a couple years ago, we had the community forum about how to better support mental health needs within this greater community. That's an ongoing issue. And then, although we've really come a long way in the last 18 months or so around MTSS, that still presents a challenge. The biggest challenge, and I hate to belabor the point, it's really time. What we're finding is that the more we drill down into what MTSS really requires of us, multi-tier system of supports, response to instruction and response to intervention, it's time. It's time to review, analyze data. It's time to design and plan instruction. It's cycles. I'm requiring my teams to progress monitor every week or every couple of weeks around math and literacy acquisition. It's complicated. It looks a lot different than it did 5 years ago, absolutely 10 years ago, or what have you. It's contemporary and it's cutting edge, but it requires a lot of time to accomplish such. And of course, as Suzanne shared, we have a lot of work over the next couple and a half days that are coming up. Thank you, Prudential Committee, for supporting that. We've already invested a lot of time into how we're trying to form and shape our schedule to support these tiered support bands across content areas and across our 4 grade levels. Of course, we traditionally use this time to support our grade level transitioning. We do a lot of curriculum mapping. I'll put a plug in for Bridges in Mathematics and our literacy programming. Good stuff. And we've worked really hard this year to embrace the new programs. And we're very excited about continuing the work into year 2 for both the reading piece, the writing piece, workshop approach, Bridges in Mathematics, and the accompanying intervention kits that come with these programs. They're spot on, and we all really appreciate how meaningful they're making instruction and intervention for our kids. So that's going to be happening, and of course we also use this time to take a look at where we are regarding student progress as compared to those benchmarks, and how that assessment data analysis really will inform our school action plan for the upcoming school year, and intervention plans that we're already beginning to put on deck for September 2016.
You mentioned one thing, you said something about being able to support one of the challenges, the level, I think it was on the children with intensive needs at the current level, is you don't think you can sustain that.
No.
So is that assumed as you formulate your new action plan, it's how to do it maybe differently so that you can sustain it, or are we just coming to the cliff and things are going to crack?
I'm not thinking that it will be in our school action plan.
Okay.
Our school action plan typically has student performance targets that include those
Right.
includes all of our children, really. I think it is such a big issue, kind of, it almost takes on, it's a process in of itself. Trying to put aside resources to support children and families
Right.
of children who have intensive needs. It requires a tremendous amount of resourcing. And I
Right.
know, I think as a principal, and I'll just speak for myself, not for the other principals at the table, I feel like we're constantly trying to take from Peter to give to Paul. And it's very challenging, especially, we're trying to do this with a set amount of resources. We don't want to come necessarily to the Prudential Committee and ask for more resources. We know what that means in terms of budgets and taxes and so forth and so on. But it's an ongoing, I think, worry for all of us about how do we sustain that level of support for kids.
I guess I leave this concern that when you say that you don't think something's sustainable at the current level we're doing it, what's that going to mean over the coming year? Are we going to start having more issues, or you think it's just going to be burnout of staff because they're trying to do too much? And to me, that's the other big concern. We have a great staff, but if we're burning them out too early, what does that mean? So I take away from this that what we're doing today is not sustainable for the next few years. Okay, thank you.
Well, he's not Peter and I'm not Paul, but we have a real-life example of how we're supporting each other to support students with intensive special needs, because we are shifting some staff members to better support students who are moving into Fleming. So that's one real action step that we're taking to focus on the students and what are the students' needs and how can we best meet those needs.
Yeah, it's really layered. It's really pretty complicated. We're sending a 0.5 SLP and a 0.5 special educator up to Fleming to support this bubble.
Right.
Kids with intensive needs, and I think all of us feel good about that because it's the right thing to do within a system.
Right.
But as we prioritize, we're trying to support those most immediate needs, but in doing that, we also now have a school that has less resources to be successful around other pieces like this whole MTSS framework.
Right.
But just like we all do, we're trying really hard to get by with what we have. Not sure if we continue to register the number of kids that we have on board with those intensive needs. I'm not sure if we're able to sustain that. By law, we're doing what we need to do. It's the moral and ethical thing to do, but it's very resource heavy.
What would, you talk about more resources. Like, are you at a point now where your resource, I know you say that you're juggling, you're moving from one school to another. When you say the word unsustainable, do you mean that you think in future years that you need to have this, just bottom line, you need more staffers, or is it more money to offer them programs? Like what, I guess by resources, I'm just a little curious as to what the specifics of that entails.
I think the two things that we've been talking about as principals are staffing and time.
And I assume, I know you two are kind of sharing, but it's affecting all three schools, or does it also hit in ADL as well? It's really a K through 8 problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The need continues to grow, and so you try to maximize the resources that you have, but eventually you just run out of resource, and like you say, you do have to be a little wary, make sure that people are not getting burned out to the point where they're not effective in the general classroom, so that they don't have anything extra left to give for those students that need that extra intervention. It's causing us to be really creative about what we do, and I don't think we're at that point yet where we're throwing our hands up going,
Right. So
can't do this anymore, but
we think our creativity so far is keeping us afloat.
It's a K-12. It's a reason.
It's all the way up.
Trauma-informed presentation tonight. And it's something that isn't the first reason why people became educators.
Right.
It was about educating through the lens of reading and writing and content areas, and knowing now the whole social emotional aspect and need around that and the supports for that. When we have systems of support that are also tapped heavily,
Right.
like DCF and Agency of Human Services, and so finding our way through that period of time, you know, I would say not only staffing and time, but I would also say professional development as we continue to grow in those areas while we're struggling with implementation of a new math program, literacy. I mean, the competing goods of,
Right.
is the issue at hand. Competing needs, not goods.
One more?
When I hear the time, you know, the time that's needed, I always think back to the calendar 2.0. I mean, the school year is not, to me, effective or efficient. And I don't know how, once we become a unified union school district, and as we're working on it, to me, something has to give, or we need to come up with different scheduling. Because the time that you have with your staff, the limitations are there. There's just, you know, you're bound within it.
You have a superintendent at the table who couldn't have been more valiant in terms of trying to make that change. I don't think I'm going to see it in my career, but I agree with you, Mara. I think, maybe 10 years down the road, or at some point, we all need to understand that what we're asking our schools to do can't be accomplished in 177 days or 176 days. It's really pretty amazing what we are able to accomplish with our current calendar and school day.
I'm old, and that was the same way the schedules were done when I was in school. So it's time. It's time to change, you young guys.
That is a debate we'll have another day. Not today.
Not a day.
Dan?
So let's at the end, go ahead.
So from our presentations, you would think that we were all in one room and we collaborated and we put down the same things, but that's just true of the continuity of the same celebrations and challenges, and what we plan to do in June is the reason why they all look pretty similar. So I'll continue the themes that have already been laid out there with a few exceptions. School action plan for Fleming, as you've seen from the last report, we're making good progress, or we've already achieved the targeted goals that we set for ourselves. I'm looking forward to the data for this spring and updating that. And as Tom said, if we can update that live for you with a Google Doc, you'll see where we've met those targets. I wanted to put in here something that I thought was significant this year, and that was the Stream of Lights Community Arts event. I think that was a great example of a community coming together and learning together and sharing in the celebration of learning that I felt was significant, and we contributed and participated in that. So I felt that needed some attention here. MTSS systematic plan implemented. Student progress has been demonstrated. We did our reevaluation of MTSS. We certainly took action steps that are included in our school action plan after last year's MTSS evaluation. And I was looking at the plan this week and highlighting those areas where we've made improvement from an already pretty solid starting place for MTSS. And we've improved on 30% of those 31 targeted issues of MTSS based on our recent evaluation. And we're already formulating steps that we can take to move that plan further. Implementation of Bridget's Math and Lucy Calkins Literacy Program, as you've already heard mentioned here. Our faculty has been working for several years with professional coaches and taking advantage of professional development opportunities that have been out there. So they were really in a good position to take on these two new programs, and very pleased with how our faculty is applying the training that they've had and learning the ins and outs of these programs that are very good for our students in terms of moving them forward. And we're hoping to see the results of that, or start to see the results of that in our recent SBAC scores here, because they are aligned. Implementation of school positive incentive, Falcon accolade promotion. It's not the core PBIS that Suzanne speaks of that is happening at Summit and is happening at Westford. It's our own home-cooked version of it to just get started with. Each classroom had school incentive programs in their classroom, and they were all different versions of that. So we felt as a faculty and staff that we wanted to incentivize some basic focus areas of kindness and respect and responsibility, and we wanted to acknowledge students who were showing that. So we started the Fleming accolade card, and this is what it looks like. And so we've upped the target in order to celebrate students achieving those accolades, and our latest target was met on Friday of 360 accolade cards were passed out to Fleming students. Over the course of like a month. We've had 3 different targets since we started the program, upping the ante each time, and students have met the target. So. And we try to have a school-wide celebration to celebrate meeting that target. And we're looking for the tie-in between behavior and like planning room data and the incentivized positive behavior that we're targeting with kindness, respect, and responsibility. And what we've already talked about for next year is that we want to focus on a different theme each month and really not only try to catch kids demonstrating those positive behaviors, but we want to teach those positive behaviors. We want to model and teach what kindness looks like, what generosity looks like, what responsibility looks like. So those will be part of lesson plans and be taught at morning meeting throughout the year next year. Fleming teachers were recognized for excellence. Very proud of the teachers at our school. As Tom mentioned, the teachers in the whole district, their professional commitment, they're seeking to be active learners through professional development and how they bring that to our students. And 2 special teachers at Fleming had special recognition this year. Melissa Coviello, 5th grade teacher, was recognized as outstanding educator for our K-8 schools in Essex Junction this year. And Kelly McClintock, who the students refer to as Miss McAwesome, was awarded an Excellence in Education Award, and she received a check for $5,000. And we had an assembly celebrating her work. She's headed back to Africa here in a couple of weeks for community service over in Africa. She's been 3 times now. Challenges, similar to what you've already heard, MTSS intervention scheduling and intervention resource training is a challenge that we are trying to find good pathways through, and it's difficult because trying to schedule like tier 2 interventions, we have to have a master schedule that allows us to do that. But we're out of the box, and we've put a schedule in place this year, and we're looking on how can we improve that schedule and provide greater intervention support for students in literacy, math, and in behavior. Providing needing level of therapeutic support for students in need. We use every minute of our school social workers' time, and we need more. We have many students on a waiting list that can't get to the social worker. We have a full caseload for the school therapist that comes once a week. There are many students on the waiting list to see the school therapist. So we have students, and we have programs to support those students. We have the Succeed program, which you probably have heard about, for students with emotional regulation difficulties and challenges, and that's been successful, and we've had really a core base of students for the past 3 years at Fleming School. And in fact, this coming year we are going to host the coordinator for the LEAP program and the Succeed program at Fleming. They'll be right on site, and they'll be needed. Time capacity to manage change expectations, whether it's professional development of new programs that we're bringing in, or MTSS goals or PBIS goals. There's just not enough time in the day, in the year, to get all that we have on our plates accomplished. So it is a continuing challenge. June workdays focus, curriculum mapping and literacy, math and science. There's going to be a district coming together, of actually the expanded district coming together over science on June 16th to talk about report cards, talk about units of study across the districts, and so we're really looking forward to being part of that. And the Fleming owned PBIS system, as I said, we want to tweak that and have a plan to move forward with that with the coming year. MTSS intervention evaluation. How did we do this year? We want to share that whole evaluation and roll it out with the whole faculty and staff. And we want to talk about how can we improve upon what we've done and what we need to do. Particularly focused on those students who we consider at Tier 2. They're not at Tier 3, they're not in special education, they're not receiving specialized services or instruction, but they're struggling to keep up. And they need that boost and they need that support. So that's an important focus of our MTSS work.
Thanks, Dan.
Anybody have questions before we move on? So you'll see some overlap with the other schools. We very much realized that we needed to have a well-trained data team, which we didn't have. So we really spent some time training the data team using a program called DataWise, and they really got grounded in how do we find the right data, what do we do with that data, and how we're going to share that data with the right people to get some traction from it. So they will be up and ready to roll right away at the beginning of the school year for 16-17. We knew when we looked at our SBAC results last year, and pretty much I think across the state that came to the same conclusion, that the area that we struggled with the most was around close reading. And if you don't know what that means, it's just we have a habit of just reading something through and really not paying attention to the pieces, parts that go into it, and then really not getting the gist of exactly what's in that piece of writing. So it's really working with students around those strategies to maybe read just first, just to get a gist of what something is. Then you're going to go back over, you're going to look at headings, you're going to go look at the bold print, you're going to look at pictures, you're going to ask yourself some questions and take some notes on the side so that you can go back and get some more information around what those pieces of information are. Everything down to part of the reason students don't do well on some of these assessments and our own assessments at school is they don't read the directions. They just jump right into the assessment and they don't really know what it is that they're supposed to be putting down. So even training them to make sure they're reading the question with the directions carefully before they get right into the process. So we're doing some work just staff-wide around close reading strategies and those expectations. You can see on the data chart, we did an on-demand writing prompt this year where our students all had the same writing prompt. The 6th grade had a little less in terms of an expectation for something they had to do within the body. The 7th and 8th grade had to provide a counterclaim. I think that was the increased rigor for their piece. And then we trained every single teacher in the building how to assess a piece of writing. And so that took quite a bit of training. Folks who had never had to really look at that in terms of what is it that language arts teachers really do within their classroom when they're scoring a piece of writing. So we used the rubric, we trained them how to use the rubric, they had to benchmark, and then everybody spent the afternoon assessing writing. And so for our first try, it came out at about a 2.5 out of a 4-point scale in terms of proficiency, which wasn't bad for the first time that we tried this. It didn't match what we saw from the SBAC scores in the last year, though, because for whatever reason, when we got the writing breakout section of the writing scores, it was really high, which kind of surprised us because it didn't match the kneecap writing scores. So we don't know what that all means yet, but we'll know better when we get the SBAC scores. As you know, 7th grade was this was the first year of the mandate to implement personal learning plans. We decided to do it with 8th graders as well. So there's an electronic template. And it's been a good learning experience for all of us. It also includes the capacity to have an electronic portfolio to collect evidence of student work in every single class throughout a student's time at ADL. So we spent a lot of time in August writing a script for how we were going to teach kids about how we're going to use these PLPs and what kind of script we were going to use for the expectations. We had reflections that would take place 3 times a year. We were going to do it in homeroom. We have multi-age homerooms, and theoretically, it really would have only been between 5 or 6 students per homeroom that somebody really had to make sure they stayed on top of monitoring. It sounded really easy. It was really hard. We definitely have to go back in and tweak some of the expectations, but I think for a first try, it was good. And I think I had told you last year that we wrote the template. EMS uses a template that's almost just like ours. So most of the students going to Essex High School will have a very similar kind of template going in for the PLPs. We started using Star Math and the SBAC interims as measures this year, and the growth was amazing that we could see students over the course of the school year. There was double-digit growth for most students, so that was gratifying to see. In terms of the SBAC, I know we can't report what the scores say or anything like that, but I can tell you that in terms of a benchmark, the scores look very similar to last year, so I think our benchmarking from last year was pretty accurate, which was good to see because it was really hard to know for the first year taking an assessment exactly what the scores meant, but it looks like there's pretty much of a lot of alignment and some nice cohort growth from 6th to 7th grade or 7th to 8th grade, so those are just real quick glimpses we've seen so far. Aaron talked about the restorative justice program. EMS is much more ahead of us in terms of implementation of restorative justice, but it's really getting students to understand that there's an impact to what you do. When you have a misbehavior, there's a whole ripple that takes place, and it's not just the person that you impacted where the action was against, but there's a whole bunch of other people and things that happen that you may not even be aware of. So that's part of it, but it's also doing restorative circles where students can sit together with the person that they've wronged in some way, and there's additional folks around and an adult to help facilitate, and they really talk about what happened and how can we keep this from happening again. And so we did several circles this year. They were really highly effective, and so the staff is really excited about more implementation throughout ADL next year.
Do you see a lot of, so you said successful, that means you didn't have like a lot of repeat?
Those students that went through that circle process were far less likely to repeat that same behavior, at least to that same kid.
Okay.
Didn't necessarily happen that it may happen to some other child, but we could see a positive impact. I think I should also mention that I didn't put it in there as an accomplishment or a challenge, but it was a rough year at ADL in terms of behavior, and that was why we did the community forums. It's why we brought Sweethearts and Heroes over to Tom Murphy, the speaker, and that was well done. The 6th grade read The Revealers, which is a book about bullying. They did it together as a whole grade book discussion, and the teachers met in small groups and really had some wonderful discussions with kids. And that did turn the behavior around decidedly. Things started to improve greatly, but that was a result of some of the behaviors that just perked out of, we're not sure what exactly happened there, but that was why we did what we did with that. So the restorative justice approach was a nice complement to the work that we did in January and February. We also had the school nurse used a system called SNAP to really chart the data in terms of visits by students. We were finding some students that were there so many times during the day, and so she still started to track that data, meet with teams to talk about those students and what is it that's going on with them, and was able to proactively make some plans for those students, and that drastically reduced the number of nurse visits for students who were using the nurse as a crutch or an excuse or whatever reason. So that's been a real positive. Our challenges, you've heard about the same challenges around the clock. The mental health needs, not only for our students, but our families that are in a lot of traumatic stress and just anxiety that just rises to the surface. So a lot of times students are walking in the door and high anxiety before they even get to us, and we're dealing with the impact of that immediately. The time to analyze the data, there's so much data, but just trying to figure out where to find the time to analyze it and do the best that we can from it. How to provide best intervention in math and reading during the school day. We know students they're busy, and they have things that they need to be able to do before and after school, include having some letdown time and some social time, and so to continue to try to look at intervention as only being a before or after school event is really not realistic. So this year we took our math support person, and she basically we had her really spend most of her time in the 6th grade, and she did intervention block with the 6th grade team, did some coaching with them, and really front-loaded the support with 6th grade, and we saw some big gains in scores in the STAR math over that course, so we're hoping we'll see the same thing when we get the SBAC scores back. But we are going to spend some time in June talking about that intervention, and you can put it on there. But one of the other things we're going to talk about is what can we do within our schedules to provide intervention similar to what the 6th grade this year. They had an intervention time of about 20 minutes every day, 25 minutes every day. Between math and reading, and 7th and 8th grade is trying to figure out how they can fit their intervention time in as well. We went to jump rope. We need to do some debriefing around that. We weren't happy with some of the way the grades got averaged, so we have a Skype call with jump rope to talk about the difference in maybe looking at a different way to figure the assessment outcomes. We need to talk about the PLPs, student recognition, and then the close reading, common approaches and vocabulary, and then we've also done some work around inquiry rubrics across the school, because inquiry is almost in every single class, and we want to have some common language and strategies in using those inquiry rubrics. And then with a new principal coming in, and the fact that our mission vision statement's 10 years old, that it's a good time to start thinking about looking at mission vision. So we're going to start some beginning conversations around those pieces and give Jen some feedback about some areas of focus that the staff is interested in pursuing in relation to the mission vision statement.
Just a question, and I don't know quite how the transition works, so I apologize. Is Jen a part of the June work days, or is that going to occur without her?
She's going to try to close out her own school.
Okay.
So we will take excellent notes and let her know what happened, and we'll do some transition work in July when she comes on board.
Okay.
Thank you. Well,
Judy, close your ears. Question is, I believe it was open house at Hiawatha, and it was kindergarten classes this year, I think, were less than they've been in the past. And talking to teachers during open house, it felt like they had a sense of relief and they could give time to the students. So I'm assuming Summit might have had lower kindergarten classrooms. And I keep wondering, I know our schools have a limited amount of rooms, we have a limited amount of space, but with everything that's going on and everything you've got to do with kids, when we've done some of our school tours, and we've got a lot of para-educators or whatever you want to call it in there, it always seems a little cramped and crowded to me. Is there a point where we need to start looking at classroom sizes again, and what's the optimum, minimum optimum? Because it sounds like the needs that we're addressing these days, it's getting harder. Would that be one way to start looking at things? Can it be brought under control with less kids? And I know we had to add a teacher at Fleming last year, and you're keeping them, and then ADL, we added one. But like, I went to your open house last year, and I was shocked after we added that teacher for, I think it was 4th grade or 5th grade, and the other grade was up there 25 and 26 in a classroom. So it seems to me like we've got a lot of kids coming in at a certain time also, not always coming in at kindergarten. Is that correct? Do you find an onslaught at a certain time period, age group?
Yeah, we're clearly the place to be for education, so we do have a lot of transfers in.
Yeah, and I heard from a parent this year, it was interesting, they talked about ADL and the bullying going on, and they mentioned that the children they saw having problems were ones that had moved into the district, not ones that had been in the district and gone through all the trainings that you folks have been doing. So I wonder how much of an impact that is, because that's coming in at Fleming, right, where you get a lot of those, the influx. So I just wonder if there's a strategy that could be used for incoming students. Is there a way of talking to them separately? I don't know how teachers work this or how you can do it. I don't know if you can legally pull kids aside. You know, I'm thinking of a new staff member. You'd kind of do a training. So it's like, do the new kids get a training? So just.
You know, I think it goes back to the calendar conversation. You know, I think that effort was championed a couple years ago because of need. And I think that's what we continue to struggle with. It's not just the calendar, it's that, these buildings, although they're terrific buildings and they're well kept and maintained, that they were built for really a different time. And, you go into any of our schools, we're literally using broom closets and utility closets to provide student supports. And, we're making do, and we're doing what we need to do, and we're all being very earnest about it from bottom to top to bottom. But I do worry that given the ongoing pressures that we're feeling, the changing demographic in this community, whether or not we are able to sustain or maintain that effort, I think this movement toward a unified district is it's a good thing. And I think a lot of us at the table have really been awaiting the greater conversation as we move toward unification. We're looking at it, I think, as an opportunity to really critically examine what we're doing across the board, all aspects of our work, and hopefully derive some solution sets. So I really appreciate your insight, because as I'm listening, I'm thinking to myself, let's come up with an indoctrination program for families that are moving in. I think we actually did we took a look a couple years ago, Judy, if I recollect, and I don't want, this is not on the record or for the record, but I think we come up with like about a third of our kids by the time we get to ADL are new kids to the district. Mm-hmm. And so have I, as a principal, kind of critically sat down and considered that data point in my planning and preparation? No. And I think what I'm hearing is I certainly have work to do as well as a principal.
I never thought of it till I had a parent explain to me what they were seeing. And not as a general complaint or something to send to the principal or superintendent, but just an observation they had.
Our population has become more transient, so we have a lot more movement. I remember when Suzanne first started, she would talk about being a middle level principal and seeing 4 or 5 different schools by the time they reached middle school, and talking with her, I learned some kids are experiencing that by 2nd grade now and 3rd grade. So it's another piece of what's changing in societally that we have to examine and change practice to meet those needs.
I admire what you do. It's very difficult work.
Really, and thank you for saying that, because the principals sitting in this room make it happen every day with their staffs, and really it's one time a year that I can bring them forward and say how appreciative I am of their labor, from finding a sub at 6:30 that was unexpected to being there for kids past the school day and helping families reunite, and
Sometimes being that side.
sometimes being that. So
Right.
really, they do it all, and they do it all with a passion for kids. And so we are blessed in this district to have amazing leaders, and we'll probably end with their latest work. And Suzanne spearheaded this slide, and as I said earlier tonight, we have Rob Evans with us, who can also provide sort of a statewide overview of this type of work. So Suzanne?
Great. So the past 5 weeks, we have done 5 drills to include Westford as our 5th drill in between the Hiawatha and ADL drill. Just give you a sort of overlay of what it looked like. I think we are thrilled with the 5 drills and the experiences that we've had. Each of the drills, we did identical drills in every building, coordinated with police, fire, and rescue, where the premise of the drill is smoke in the kitchen, and the closest pull station for a fire alarm is activated closest to the kitchen. We tested our 911 system as well by actually physically dialing 911, which obviously in a real emergency may or may not happen with a pull station of an alarm. But in this district, when you would dial 911, no matter where it is in the building, it rings into the main office as an alarm with the location. Our rooms and our phones are all location specific with 911, so we checked that piece of it when we dial 911. Did we get the correct room? Did it activate in the main office? And in addition, that alarm also rings at the high school, so someone outside of the building has a response to that. So in each of the buildings, we started with that 911 call. We then did the pull station of the alarm, activating emergency services to our building, initiated evacuations in all of our buildings. That sort of overflow of that started the response of central office being notified, of IT being notified, of facilities being notified, and responsive teams to each of the schools. And so really the basic part of the drill you can see is our operational coordination. How do we work within Chittenden Central with each other and all of the resources that we have within Chittenden Central, how we work with emergencies outside, and communication. We have at each of our buildings a set of radios that we can talk within our buildings. We have throughout the district radios where we're talking to IT facilities, central office on district radios that reach much further, and our communication with incident command and with police, fire, and rescue on scene at the time. During these drills, each of the drills was the fire department arrives, goes into the building, declares that we have smoke and that we need to relocate our building. Summit Street School had defined hosts of Fleming. Fleming came to Summit. Hiawatha evacuated, relocated on their property further away. ADL relocated to the church just this morning, and really sort of tested that. How do we become an operational school within another location, and how are we fully up and running and functional? Obviously not delivering academics, but as a functional school that has our nursing system up and running, we have our IT up and running, we can reunify with families. We're set up to be a reunification site with families, while simultaneously having our communication with central office and we also tested our communication with our families with our alert messaging system. We notified all of our families ahead of time and with the script of the drill, and we sent that out in each of the drills. When central office was notified, central office sent out messaging to families, and at the conclusion of all of our drills also let families know that our drill had concluded, just as we would in an emergency, sending out information. We had Grant helped us out with getting a grant from, I think that covered most of it from school board insurance trusts for vests, so that in each of the drills we have color-coded vests so that we know who everybody is, facilities, IT, school staff, school administration, and emergency services knows who we are and what role we play, guidance, school nurse, and that was very effective and a great feeling. It's a large district. You don't know everybody within the district, nor do you know emergency services. We definitely know each other a lot better. Great feeling to be in Fleming School with 240 Summit Street School students, 55 staff, completely up and running in Fleming, have an IT team walk in with their blue vests. The IT team that responded wasn't from Fleming or Summit, so they were not familiar to me. They walk right into the cafeteria, see the administrator vest, walk over, introduce themselves. We're here, you're up and running, your nurse's office is up and running, your office is up and running, your Wi-Fi points are all set. That is just fantastic collaboration. I think that was a great experience for all of us. We learned a lot in every single drill. We got to improve many things throughout. We have plenty of things to look at for the future to do, but it was a great experience. And I think I'll let Rob talk about the state world.
Yeah, this is what I do statewide. My role is the school safety security liaison officer for the Agency of Education Department of Public Safety. To assist the Secretary of Education and the Commissioner of Public Safety in this type of thing. And I got to tell you, I've traveled to all 4 corners of the state this last year, and I haven't seen it like this, where it starts at the top down from a leadership perspective, from the superintendent's office all the way down to the principals of leadership at the individual schools. It really is the tip of the spear. When I go across the state and talk about this is what I talk. This is the mirrored image that I would like to take across the state. And it's not only from the leadership from the superintendent's office, but it's also with the first response organizations here as well, where they are fully engaged in the preparation process. They're fully engaged operationally. They're speaking the same speak. They're going to the same training sessions. They're talking about emerging trends in responsive to violent intruders and active shooters and those types of things. So those kinds of conversations really are, again, the tip of the spear in the state right now. But I got to tell you, to go back to when I first walked into the meeting about the trauma-related issues and the opiate-related issues, coming from 23 years in law enforcement, I tell you, this is where we solve the problems at this level. 18, 20, 25-year-old, we can save it, but probably not likely. This is where it all begins. Getting folks to think about those types of things, think about where those critical hot spots are, not only within this community, but statewide. Getting law enforcement and all the partners incorporated into the solution-based processes for this. Again, I grew up, or my kids all grew up in the Essex Junction area. We're blessed to have had them go through the Summit and ADL and Essex High School. I don't think you folks could do it much better. It doesn't come without the support of you folks and from the superintendent as well. I think the Secretary of Education gave a kudos with folks that were, the process and the planning and the preparation involved here. Again, it's just outstanding.
And I should have said that when it comes to the emergency services piece, and I'm not sure that if you're all aware, is we meet monthly with emergency services, and that's been going on for years and years. And that's by Chief LaRose at the Essex Police Department runs those meetings every month. So they're not new players sitting out on the table for the planning pieces of it, and they are every step of the way helping us plan the drills, and they're each day of the drills.
So just in closing on that note, so appreciative of Rob Evans' attendance at all the drills except for this morning, and the feedback, all the work principals did with their staffs, their students, and coordinating the work. Our leadership team made a commitment to this work. I think we always rise to the occasion to do what's important, and we do it as a team. And to be joined with the emergency services that suited up 90-degree days, those firemen were dressed with helmets, and to have them know our schools and for our students to see them and know them, I think that relational piece is so important. And so I'm very grateful for the volunteers that step forward to work with us through this experience. And And thank you for coming and all the work you've done on that as well, principals.
I'm gonna give up. Oh, I see.
There are a couple of links for our school board, our Prudential committee members, and I'm sure that a number of you have jumped into this and taken a look. It really is something that you have some time to do, would be a great thing to do. And then just finally, as a group of schoolhouse leaders, we just wanted to thank you, our Prudential committee, school board members, for your support and your trust and your responsiveness. So we know that in a lot of ways the work that you do is very challenging and very difficult. You give up a lot of your time in your work from family, and so we appreciate all that you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say I'm just very honored to have spent the last several years on the board, working with most of you guys, and I look forward to, one more year on the board, working with you folks. It's been really good. So thank you guys. You're welcome.
That letter that the Secretary of Education sent you, is that something you can post on the CCSU website? And I don't know if you'd want to post it on all the school sites, but I thought that was very valuable information for parents to know their kids are safe and protected.
That's a great suggestion, and I should have personally taken the minutes. Include as a recommendation, and as we talked about all the folks, Ben Dickey's been the communications person at the central office level, sending out the emails and ensuring the evacuation drills have worked so smoothly, so I'd be remiss not to mention his efforts involved in that as well.
Bye, Lori.
Bye, thank you guys.
Good night, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Thank you. Eventually.
Okay, well.
Yes, take care. Thank you.
Next on our agenda.
The meeting that never ends.
Is a discussion on the Recreation Governance Study Committee, an update. Oh, hey, here's Brad.
Oh, good.
He snuck in here.
Brad's here.
Yes.
Can probably stand and pick up. This is like since 5:30 you've been meeting.
Yes.
So,
Um,
quick stretch.
Yes, good for you. Good for you.
Lead us in that, Mr. Recreation.
Yes, Brad can talk a couple of things about what we talked about at our last meeting. The meeting minutes from the May 11th one also was in your org notes. So we met on June 1st. You can go ahead and share with us.
So the Rec Governance Study Committee is meeting again on Wednesday night, and they're hoping to make a recommendation as to the future governance model. And right now, all signs have been pointing towards forming a union municipal district, which would be our own recreation district serving both the village of Essex Junction and town of Essex. And part of this evaluation of the different models, people, especially in particular, the folks who are from the village have, certainly expressed a keen interest in sustaining the existing programs that EGRP coordinates, and maintaining the relationship with schools. And so what we've talked about is in the future working with the Unified Union School District and what that will look like. And that board tomorrow night is evaluating a resolution just acknowledging their relationship with municipal recreation and a desire to continue that in the future, whatever that form of recreation may be, serving our communities. But in particular for the Prudential Committee, I think is the consideration of what you all are well aware is of sustaining the relationship of preschool at Park Street School. And we, Judy, Paul, and I had a lengthy conversation with Chris Leopold, and we had talked about a variety of ways that the Prudential Committee, should you desire, could codify that relationship in the future. And ultimately, I think what we what Chris was advising was that because there isn't a new recreation entity yet, that a memorandum of understanding or a letter of intent wouldn't really be prudent, since those things are typically developed between two separate organizations, and the future municipal recreation organization doesn't exist yet. So what we talked about was doing a resolution potentially tonight for the Prudential Committee. And basically, you know, to help satisfy or allay any of the fears that the community may have, or the folks on the Rec Governance Study Committee, that this governance change will affect the programs that currently exist. And so we talked about doing a resolution to acknowledge the support that you all have had for pre-K, quality pre-K education at Park Street School, and sustaining that in the future, whatever the governance model may be for municipal recreation.
Let's see, so one of the questions, you know, was asked was, you know, the agreement that we currently have between the village trustees and the PC. And so obviously we go away on the 1st of July next year. And I know how the agreement's written that it essentially will terminate 2 years after, I think after notification, unless both parties would agree to terminate it early. And I know in discussions with, you know, with the trustees, they certainly would be agreeable to a termination of, you know, July 1 of 2017 in a I guess a more formal setting. So I'm not sure exactly how we would do that. I mean, if that would be something we would need to draft up ahead of time and hold a separate meeting for that. So I don't know.
Well, I guess the question was, say we did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever proposal from the Recreation Committee doesn't pass a vote, what legally happens to the Prudential or to EGRP come July 1st, 2017? Does it legally just get transferred and everything to the new school board as part of an existing agreement under the Prudential Committee? Or does it, because the Prudential Committee goes away, does it just terminate all agreements? Do we have that answer from Chris?
Well, his answer, I mean, you know, according to the notes, is that it would still, like I said, it would still exist with the PC and expire in 2018. But beyond that, I don't know.
I guess that's because the PC is not an entity that has any infrastructure, and everything else that the PC owned transfers to the new school district.
Right.
Does that mean that this would transfer to the new school district?
So the short answer was that the agreement between the village and PC terminates on July 1st, 2018.
The existing agreement?
Yes.
If we asked to terminate it, or one of the parties asked to terminate it?
So in the meantime, the direction that Chris provided was that the PC should inform the village trustees immediately that they, or should consider this, that they do not intend to renew the agreement and that it'll expire at the end of the current 3-year term.
Right, I guess that's where I'm still confused, Judy, because I thought any agreement that the Prudential Committee is involved in transfers to the new school board. So this specific agreement would not transfer as is?
There is no mention of transferring it to the village within the agreement.
No, I meant there's no mention that it would transfer. So every other contract that the Prudential Committee has transfers to the new school district, except this one would not be able to be transferred legally?
That's correct. What you have in this agreement,
Yep.
it's for the PC to operate
Right.
the village recreation.
And-
So, go ahead.
And that goes through right now 2018, and so
Right.
yeah. So to answer your two questions, one is what Judy was saying. Chris is was advising the Prudential Committee to send that letter to the trustees indicating your desire to discontinue that agreement.
Yep.
and then it would expire in 2018, which means if absolutely nothing happens on July 1, 2017, EJRP would transfer to the new unified union, and the unified union would be charged with operating it
For
until
1 year.
2018.
Okay. But that's
Until
where.
June 30,
Okay.
2018.
So that's what I wasn't understanding.
So this is where I have then my concern, and I mean, I know that the committee's gonna make a recommendation, which I think is a good recommendation if it goes the way I think it's gonna go. However, knowing that this has to go for a vote, I would not feel comfortable making any kind of a recommendation today until we get a strong position from the Unified School Board as to what their intentions are as it regards to EJRP. We had a conversation with them in an informal way, nothing binding, no vote that they would think about, but if anybody on that board has any feeling that for whatever reason the school district still does not mind or wants to operate the EGRP as part of the school district, I don't feel comfortable changing that agreement and having it go to the village if there's at least a body that's going to be able to operate it, and then still take the time to work on what's the best place for it if a vote were to fail and we don't have a path, instead of having it transfer and then transfer. So it's just until there's some information, I think, before we should act, we should get that from the new unified school district, is what that board really's desire and wants are as well. I mean, and really, to me, all of this is kind of the backup plan if the recreation committee's thing goes through and a vote passes. That will hopefully form something new. But if that does not pass, whereas the public said, I don't want to unify two parks together, then I think, we leave it the way it's been operating. Unless the new unified union said, I want nothing to do with this, then the next logical thing is that terminate the agreement and let the village take over.
Ken, I got a question. I read the resolution that's coming to the board I'm on tomorrow night, and I honestly don't think it's a very strong statement. I don't like it. I'm not going to vote yes for it, okay? Unless someone can talk me into something differently, because I think the way it's worded just sounds nice. It's not a legal document. So my concern has been for the rec department is you've got IT, you've got payroll, you've got human resources. And even if you go through this process and you get the vote to unify the rec departments, would you still need to have services uninterrupted till 2018 anyways? Because you've got to go through those votes. You've got quite a bit of time. It's the timing of everything I'm worried about.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Paul can speak to the legality of a resolution. I was thinking there would be something a little stronger than resolution.
I can speak to what the intention is of a resolution, and I think Brad was touching on it earlier, that, and I have read the resolution that's going to be presented tomorrow night, and essentially what it does, it summarizes or captures Article 8 from the Articles of Agreement for the Unified Union, and it really allows the Unified Union to stand on that the basic premise of that article, which is continuing the relationship between the communities and the municipal recreation department that serves that community. So it doesn't go any further, and I appreciate your caution or your wonder why it doesn't. And again, I think one of the ideas behind going further with an MOU, a memorandum of agreement, or a contract or something of that sort, requires, and we talked a little bit about this last Wednesday at the Rec Governance Committee, that there be a party to sign off on the other end. So if the Unified Union is going to make a memorandum of agreement, it's a little premature now because there's no municipal body that's going to be there's no one else to be able to sign that other part of the agreement. There's no other party, I guess is the best way to put it. So in that sense, it's a little premature, because if the Unified Union wanted to make an agreement, there's really no party that's been identified yet, absent, the recommendation going forward and approval of that new body, if that's the recommendation. So I think the recommended venue was really to make a statement, and that statement would be in the form of a resolution. And I'm not sure how strong you can make that resolution when you don't know the other party and what they're going to be providing in terms of services. So that, I hope that's a little helpful.
I think the piece that became clearer for me when we had that conversation with Chris and Brad and Paul was that the municipal governing structure, which is Title 17.
Title 24.
24. They also have a process that you go through of articles of agreement and creating a new entity. So it's just like when we formed the Red Study Committee, nobody would have voted, or could there be a resolution or any memorandum of understanding until people understood, well, what is that new entity? How is it structured? What is it going to provide? And the details or the meat I think you're looking for will happen through that study process.
Yeah, I think
accurate?
that's a great way to look at it, and I think it's the analogy of the Red Study Committee coming up with the Articles of Agreement. Once that recommendation was to move forward with the Unified Union District vote, there needed to be that meat, like what the school district was going to do. And one of those articles was Article 8, but there are countless others that really spoke to what you were voting on, what the communities were voting on. And I think similarly, the work of the Rec Study Committee is not done until, if that recommendation moves forward to create that new municipal district, really to outline what the articles are. And I think one of those, if the Unified Union was looking, would say, okay, we'd like an article to speak to what services are going to be provided, or if there's a strong relationship between the school buildings, recognizing a strong history of relationships between the buildings and the municipal rec programs.
And it could be as vague as when we were doing the Red Study Committee, when it came to the topic of transportation, for example. We left it to be determined, but we found out, we reviewed the legal status of what that meant. The same is true here, where there'll be things that won't be determined until they go back to the Unified Union Board to say, well, what kind of contracted services would benefit, and how would that be structured? So it's in a premature place.
And Marla, I also think about the letter that the Red Study Committee asked the trustees to write. And it was an acknowledgement that the Unified Union was going through a process of potentially coming together with the school districts. It didn't talk specifically about how the village would take over recreation. It just said that they supported it, and it was really rather vague. And that's how I look at the resolution tomorrow night. It can't have specificity yet because we don't know what it's going to be. But at least it's a recognition and a public document that acknowledges a relationship and a desire to continue it with municipal recreation.
So I'm gonna just circle back, because I just wanna make sure I understand this point.
Yeah.
So, if we were to do nothing as the Prudential Committee, rec governance makes its recommendation, it goes to the town and votes, it fails, or it passes. Let's say it fails. As of July 1, 2017, the agreement that the Prudential Committee has with the Village of Essex Junction would roll into the new unified school district and just keep going, where there would be a governing body for EGRP. It wouldn't change anything for the community as far as EGRP goes, and gives more time to allow a new agreement, educating of the public of what the next direction is going to go. Doesn't touch any of the services of EGRP. They just operate like they do today. Why are you saying no? Because he was shaking his head yes, you were shaking your head no.
I said no because it wouldn't be the Unified Union board would be looking at recreational services for the 3 communities it serves currently.
Yep.
And they wouldn't take on or I wouldn't advise them to take on a community separate from the other three. That's their purpose.
But then they could then,
Change it.
they could
They
change
could
it.
change it.
But
I
I'm
didn't say
thinking
that,
from-
but it doesn't remain, this idea or notion that everything remains the same is
Yeah.
erroneous. Because they can't leave things the same.
They would have to have, but now it leaves time, if a vote fails, for things to be transitioned or a new plan put in place without changing the structure of EGRP today, or the support services for EGRP, or anything for the districts it serves today to change.
What we've talked about a little bit at the rec study committee meetings is it is a desire to not just allow fate to determine, you know, to be planned, to have a plan about what happens next. And part of the agenda for Wednesday is creating that backup plan. If the vote doesn't go forward in November, what can happen in the interim or long term, you know, what is that plan? So what I would say in terms of where this board is at tonight is allow that conversation to happen Wednesday. Your window to provide notice to the trustees of a desire to renegotiate or end the agreement with them closes or renews on July 1. And so part of the reason for writing that letter or signing off on that today would be to notify them prior to July 1 so that the expiration is in 2018. And if you wait until July or August, then the new expiration will be 2019.
That's if both parties don't agree to terminate it earlier.
Agreed.
Let natural course take it.
Right. So I don't think it hurts you at all to write the letter to say we'd like to.
Yeah, I am uncomfortable writing a letter unless I know that the new school district has no intention that they want it. And I would like to have that board say that before I change something that is part of the community that's merging into them.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm hoping that the vote, if the recommendation goes, I hope the vote passes. But I'm trying to be realist enough to know that I don't want to make another change, not knowing that that board's really intent or their desire. And, you know, they had just heard about it the first time in the May meeting. They wanted time to think about it, but I think I'd really like to know what they really want to do.
I think that they'll make a decision. In fact, they've identified a decision-making process in which they're going to go through
Yep.
the congruence with all of their decisions with the articles of agreement to
Yep.
form this new unified district. So here you see one article,
Yep.
but there's other articles in there that talk about scope and efficiencies and cost savings and a variety of other pieces that have to be studied.
Yep.
And I would strongly recommend that you don't leave this to fate, that you be proactive, and if the committee decides to form a municipal parks and governance structure, that going through those articles of formation of what would be included is where your community conversation happens with how the community wants to see it, just like they did with the school system. And until the community can engage on that, then it isn't a simple yes, leave it, or to continue or no.
I think that's not the issue. I mean, for us, it's this. I mean, we have the plan.
Yeah,
We have the recommendation,
yeah.
and we plan to do everything to inform folks but they still have a decision to make. And if that decision is contrary to our recommendation, then, we have the discussion as far as what else to do. And in that discussion, I in all honesty, will be, well, what will happen, what are our other options? And this is, I guess part of one of the other options is how does it naturally flow? I mean, the least amount of action on our part results in this, I guess what we're trying to get at. We plan on taking much more action.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no plan to not do anything, but if there, what is the result of the minimum amount of action, I guess? And that's what we're trying to just define that and make sure it's very clear that this is the consequences of inaction, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just, to me, it's looking at a backup plan because it's a short window
Right.
between now in November
Right.
on a vote. Short window to try and, one, make all the right articles agreement, get the word out, get people bought into it. I mean, luckily, we're gonna have, hopefully, a November election where you're gonna have a great turnout because it happens in presidential election, so we should have a great turnout, which means we'll get a lot of community members. But if they say no to it, what's the backup plan to, one, either spend more time to actually do more planning to, because it could be people don't see the benefit. Some of the folks, why do I even want to change anything? What's the benefit? It gives more time to try and work on that, to then put it up for, a year further. So why are we going to try and make too many changes? So I just would like, before I would support any kind of resolution, I would like to have it, an opinion, a statement from the new unified board as to, either I want nothing to do with this, find a backup plan, in which case we can make one.
Right.
And I'm totally in agreement with that, or, we just don't know yet, or, if there's not a definite, we want nothing to do with this, then I don't feel comfortable making a decision that removes EGRP totally from the school district.
Well, on Wednesday, I think, this is on the agenda to come up with that backup plan.
Yep.
For the study committee. I think allowing EJRP to go under the unified union and still only serve the village is really complicated.
I have trouble, because we make decisions that affect the elementary schools, you make decisions that only affect the high school, you make decisions that only affect the ADL, so there is things where you're only affecting certain schools.
In our current
areas.
governance structure.
But even in the future, they're gonna make decisions that
In future,
affect
it's
the
a new
elementary.
entity. It's a single entity that serves all three communities. So it's a bigger question. It's not EJRP anymore. It's a bigger question for the new board with their new lens and their new level of responsibility that no longer serves just the village, just Westford, just ET, Essex Town. It serves the whole. And so it's a much more complicated, as Brad said, decision to be made. They provided you their appreciation for programming, and in this article, continuing to say a pledge of support. Are they in a place in 1 year to make all of those decisions as they're making multiple decisions on the unification and merger process? That's why all I'm saying is I highly advise a proactive stance, that the conversation starts sooner rather than later, and that some specificity occurs as far as what a new entity would look like, so that labor of love moving forward isn't in a back seat with the amount of work that the new unified district is doing.
I would just like to have the unified district give a position before and we can have another special meeting before the July 1st.
Right.
But I would like to have them
Right.
have a position. Because as it is, they're going to get all the assets, right? Anything that the PC owned gets transferred to that board,
That's
right?
what I noticed here under the question I had.
Right.
All
So I
land,
wanna
buildings, assets, and debts of the PC would be transferred to the Unified Union District on July 1, 2017. That is the pool, that is the rec department building, that is the debt associated with it. So, I don't know, there's some legal, I just think we need to be very clear and I'd like some legal documents to be looking at. I want to protect the rec department that I've worked so hard for on 20 some odd years in this school district. I don't want them out there floating alone. I don't want to come 2018 and find out that the trustees or the town, whichever way we go, can't handle the HR, can't handle all these things because we didn't look at it now and put into place what needed to happen. So
We're all committed and share that passion. We're all deeply committed to that. The question is, where does that legal process happen? It happens within whatever governance structure you determine. So if the recommendation of the committee is to form a municipal recreation and parks district, a new entity, then that's where they would have questions about assets and debt. Just like you had questions about assets and debt for the Red Study Committee. So what currently stands is the current state. But through that study of Title 24, you can tell it's not a title that I'm familiar with. I'm only Title 16.
Right.
So Title 24 will provide that opportunity to define, but they can't do that until the study committee makes a recommendation that that's what they'd like to form.
But I don't think even when they do that, if that doesn't say that the land and buildings that the PC owns gets transferred over without some kind of agreement with that body, which can't happen until after that body is voted on and approved,
Right.
and then approved by the state,
Right,
so
and
not
then-
until next year.
Right.
So once again, like I said, just goes back to not wanting to make another agreement that with, a different party now until that goes through. And I think the backup plan is there is some time to work out then those details. So.
I'm in a different position. I don't think all is lost if tonight you decide not to sign the letter, to not continue the agreement. I mean, obviously, if you don't do anything before July 1, it extends it to 2019.
Yep.
That's really all that you're discussing at this point. In terms of that, I think there's another piece that we want to talk about tonight, but the first was whether or not to put a letter forward to the trustees, acknowledging that you want to end that agreement if that's what you want to do.
We have a meeting on the 22nd.
Oh, we did?
Yeah,
Yes.
with the trustees and with the select board.
It was a joint meeting.
And that's where the governance committee is
Making their recommendation.
presenting their recommendation.
Yep. Okay.
When that occurs, can we have like a step one, have something written up, a document that I'd be looking at, that I as a PC person could sign off on? I mean, plan on us going the route,
Right.
and have I want to see the documents before I say I'm going to do this. And I want them in time so I can have changes made, or if the trustees, see it ahead of time. I just think it would be good for all of us in the town of Essex to see it in advance. Yeah. And the other thing, when I was reading this, Brad, the other thing I'm worried about is the EJRP, the preschool that's being run at Park Street. You guys, the rec department spent their money in retrofitting it, and I just want to make sure that there's something a little more meat on it, to make sure that they have some time that they're allowed to stay in the building, or else do we sell it to the rec department?
Or do we
Or transfer it to the rec department?
Or to the village?
Well, so that's a separate question than the agreement.
Right, yeah.
Right, so
Okay.
we can enter into a multi-year agreement as the Prudential Committee to allow them to use that facility for a period of time, and that agreement would transfer to the new school board, which I would recommend that we do sign that kind of agreement. I mean, the only thing we would want to do is cover the incidental costs that it costs to run that facility and whatever the EJRP share of that is. Like, whatever facilities cost, electric, all that fun stuff. But I think it behooves us, and
Right.
I would recommend we definitely enter into a multi-year agreement that would then transfer to the new school district to make sure that space is continued to use by the EJRP
Right.
to run the
Right.
preschool.
But in this multi-year agreement, we should know what their rent is going to be.
It should be set based on.
Because rent could change and it could make it so that those preschool programs weren't affordable.
Well, I'm assuming we could maybe do an assessment of what it costs us just to operate that facility and mean, ideally, I would like to just charge it because it serves the community and it's a community building at the cost of because we have no other use for that space, the incidental cost to maintain that space.
So,
I think this year they spent $2,500. I gotta believe it's gonna be greater than that, but
well, that's.
I think they pay
It'll
5,000,
be a
right?
different landlord at that point. So.
Yeah.
But the consideration that Brad mentioned earlier that Chris Leopold had talked about was that any type of agreement with the rec entity, the unknown rec entity at this point, may be premature. So I think what Brad and I had tried to come up with was really a resolution or a public statement that this board recognizes that relationship, recognizes that space, simply because it may be premature to have a multi-year, and I know the benefits of that.
right. But so even if we did one, if the EGRP becomes a municipal union district, that agreement wouldn't transfer with them. It would transfer.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we were to draft something and sign it between the EGRP and the Prudential Committee, it would transfer to both boards, new entities.
Yes.
So I mean, for that, for the Park Street and the preschool, I am way in favor of something like that. The only thing I want to make sure is we put something in there to cover what the cost would be to the Prudential Committee today and to the school district for a secondary party to use that facility.
And Marla, as you said, timing is everything, and everything's really tight right now. So, you all meeting tonight is hopefully an opportunity for you to consider a resolution along the lines of what you're speaking about, knowing that a new recreation entity hasn't formed yet, so you can't sign a lease, but rather pass a resolution with acknowledging your intent to do something in the future. I'll let you read.
Good catch, Brad.
And then practice. And then practice.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. That's another one.
Well, he's the building administrator of Park Street School.
The district, right?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Who's the building administrator of Park Street School? I mean, it's the principals of each school is the building administrator, right, or not? So there is none, so it's the PC in the case of, okay. All right, just want to make sure.
Essentially have what would be two tenants.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
lack of a better.
Okay.
So, I mean, the gist of this is, there's nothing binding or anything in here. It's basically saying our intent is to come to an agreement in the future to allow for a multi-year lease.
Yeah.
I mean, is that really the gist of what I just read?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, and you're asking us to take a vote on this measure that says that we support coming to a future agreement on a multi-year lease?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that really what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
And,
Yes, I'm okay.
and the rationale for that, Jason, is so that on Wednesday night, when the
Yeah, people know
study
that we're
committee,
willing to do something.
there are several folks very concerned about the future of preschool and the future relationship with schools, Marla, and that's why these two resolutions are being asked of these boards. Even though they're non-specific, they're at least a public document that acknowledges an intention to continue things.
Yeah, I would say this one, I don't have a concern with because it's non-binding, but it does say an intention that we want to enter into some kind of agreement to keep a preschool there.
And I
But it
think
doesn't
that'll
have
go-
any specifics, and we would have to come to a specific agreement to
Sure.
do that. Just, we're gonna work in good faith as an intent.
And I think that's what I've heard as one of the goals of a resolution or a multi-year agreement is to really assure the community that this board is working hard to keep EGRP's preschool in what's
In a
now the
forward
PC's
space.
building, in that space, which has been dedicated. And this is a resolution. There's no one to make an agreement with at this point.
Right.
And the Unified Union has yet to meet on any type of issue with building space, so.
It sets your intentions
Right.
Yeah.
as a board.
This document, I have no concerns with. Do we have to, I mean, how to?
I don't know if we can actually
Is this
take
something?
action on it today?
Because
Well, we didn't want to bring it, well, we have brought it forward, but we didn't want to bring it forward to the new board without your blessing.
Right.
So we didn't want to put them in that position of saying, oh, this is the intent, but if it's not with your blessing, then we don't want to ask a new board to sign off on a resolution that's contrary to your intention.
Right.
I guess that's.
Well, this really speaks to it's only the PC's intention.
Right.
It's really a statement
Yeah.
to the public and to the Unified Union, who would be able to see this tomorrow, that says, we appreciate what EGRP does. We recognize what Park Street has at the bottom floor for a program.
Right.
We're going to strive to continue that.
I gotta go back and read the resolution that's coming to the unified board tomorrow night. When I get home, I'll have to, because it's not worded like this, right?
It's much shorter.
It's much shorter.
Encapsulates Article 8 of the
Yeah.
So this got revised, we've been working, as you saw tonight.
Right.
On a lot of different levels. And you just had the opportunity to revise this last week.
I revised it after Wednesday night.
After Wednesday's
Oh, did you?
meeting.
Okay.
Mhm.
So,
I guess I haven't seen the new
With
language
Brad.
for the one going to the
Okay.
board tomorrow.
Oh, the resolution that's going to the unified.
actually, we didn't modify that.
Okay.
That hasn't
He's
been
talking about this
modified.
one.
No, this was
This
Okay,
one,
it's
modified.
this one he's talking
Based
about.
on that
This one.
conversation, we
Okay.
revised that.
Yeah, I mean, but we can't, I guess the question is procedurally.
That's what I was gonna say.
We take a vote
I
on this
think,
because we didn't warn about this being a motion, or can we?
but we could I can ask for consensus on
Okay.
the resolution, just
Okay,
so that the meeting minutes would reflect that,
we consent.
yeah,
Okay.
there's, well,
So do you need a?
whatever
motion?
it actually
So
is.
do you need a motion for that?
No, I can just ask, are there, if there's any board member present who would not give consensus to this resolution?
The resolution regarding the pre-K school run by EJRP at Park Street School.
That is correct.
That's the only consensus you're looking for right now.
That is it.
So, and with the way this last paragraph is worded, I like it because it says, is prepared to consider a lease or use agreement at Park Street School for a reasonable period of time to honor the development of that program and ensure the continuation of the pre-K program with any future municipal governing body for that, because it makes it sound like we still gotta do another agreement.
Yes. I mean, that's basically all it says is.
That's my understanding.
this is-
And with that understanding, I think I am
Right.
in favor
I'm
of
okay
this.
with that understanding. Patrick, you're in the
Welcome to the
hot
board,
seat.
Patrick.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to, taking it all in, I
Yes.
guess. I understand there's a lot of moving parts to it, honestly, this seems fine to me. There's nothing binding in it, but, just a good statement to the community. I'm happy with it.
Right, I think it really, it lays out what our intention is, what
Yeah.
our hope is, what we would, what we would like to continue to see.
This will be a companion document that can go to the unified board tomorrow night. Actually, we can send it tomorrow electronically to new board
Send it.
members.
This board consented to it, but.
Right.
Didn't take a formal vote, but it's consent.
Right, we've
Because I
given our
think it's
consent to
important
move
that
forward
they
with this
see the
resolution.
intention of the Prudential Committee.
No, like I said, for that, definitely the pre-K and stuff, I am.
And this
something
board
I
can
would definitely
formally
want
take
to-
an action by motion on the 22nd, we meet again.
Yeah.
Right,
With the trustees.
With the trustees and the select board.
town select board.
correct.
And that would be a motion just for the resolution. And then if we need a further agreement, we might have to do that.
Which we would need, a formal agreement, because that would spell out all the details.
Yeah, because this is great,
This
but
is-
non-specific.
No, I
Right,
mean, the
right.
22nd, we'd just be agreeing to something like this. We don't have the formal
Right.
agreement.
We
Right,
would
right,
need a-
exactly,
We
yes,
would still need to
exactly.
take
Okay.
a formal agreement, which to me would involve what the costs are.
You do have a year.
To do it.
Yeah.
Right, and we'll know,
I mean, I think our challenge would be to to want to make sure we enter into that within the next set of months or whatever, is to really understand what is the cost that the EGRP would basically have to pay the school district for the use of that, which I think is, you know, maybe you guys could tell us what is the reasonable cost that you think it cost us to operate that and for, you know, for their use.
So I'm just going to say one more time. There's articles of agreement. I think printing out what those articles of agreement are, not articles of agreement. The what did we do for the red study? Those
It's articles of agreement.
articles of agreement. I'm sorry, 9 o'clock, it shuts
The
down.
yet to be formed piece of work.
Right.
Should that recommendation come forward from the committee, there's that body of work that, similar to what the Red Study Committee did, really outlines what this municipal park district is going to accomplish, what the, you know, who's voting in it, who comprises it, all that.
The cost and analysis that you're looking for, those
Wouldn't that
pieces.
though have to come from the school district?
We'll be tapped when
Okay.
Brad's going through that with the study committee. I'm sure we'll be tapped just
Right.
like we
Okay.
were for the other.
Because I didn't think Park Street, other than, because it'll be a separate agreement between the body that is going to be EGRP in the future and the school district, it's gonna be an agreement between those two, because the school district's still gonna own Park Street.
That's correct.
So that wouldn't go into the articles of agreement.
So with
Right.
Park Street, there's just that other little snag that there's 2 tenants.
Right.
And that, in a spirit of collaboration, you have a program there that's a high school program
Correct.
that you would want to provide as much support for as you would your preschool program, and any kind of difference or transition that the new board might consider.
Yeah.
So it's for me, it's keeping track of the ownership of the greater entities, of all the different pieces, because we've shared for so long, we see that naturally. And there's a new board in place that is forming one entity, the new district. And so that sense of ownership is something that we need to clarify.
Okay.
All right.
There's also one other piece as a PC that I think we should address at our Unified Union School Board meeting. The last one, we had a board member that's on that board state to that committee that the rec department had cost CCSU a lot of money, more than is showing in the budget of $150,000. He threw out the number $150,000. I think personally, I myself would like to see that number and get that cleared up, because the statement was made on camera. Also, the statement was made by the same individual that the high school had revamped Park Street and are the ones that spent the money fixing that building up. So I would like to get that officially,
But
yeah.
why does that matter?
It matters
I mean, it's in the
because
past.
it's on the record, and I think it twists it around for other board members that don't know the facts.
No, I'm more on the fact that the cost for the administrative services, I totally agree with you, we should have that total cost laid out. But the fact that whatever group paid within the CCSU to revamp Park Street, which was a CCSU building, why is that?
It wasn't, it's a PC building.
Yeah, that was
We
PC
paid our
building.
capital grant money and
Okay.
fixed it up, and Essex Junction Rec and Park retrofitted the 2
Yeah.
programs down. So I think it leads other board members from the town and from Westford to go, aha, we need, this isn't gonna work out if that's the way it is. I just wanna make sure it's on the record and that we've corrected that.
Right, that the record's accurate. Okay.
Duly noted.
And Judy, you were working on what the total cost of the administrative type services was?
We have that budgeted.
So we do have that number?
Mhm.
Is that something we can share here or not?
I didn't come prepared tonight with
The-
that.
I mean, are you talking about the number that's currently in the budget?
I know the currently in the budget's like the
It's
roughly
150,
150,
yeah.
but I meant you guys were working on what you would feel was the true cost if it was to be an independent entity and,
Well,
right?
yeah, so it's pretty tricky to.
I understand. I mean, believe me, I know it's a very complex because there's a lot of pieces there.
Yeah. I'm not sure, that analysis hasn't been
No.
done.
Okay.
I think a little bit, it's been put on hold since it's been pretty clear, it seemed like from the Unified Union Board, that they weren't that interested in taking on the rec department, at least at first, and it would be a rather cumbersome process or uphill battle to do that. So I think the process of really analyzing the cost for the school district is on hold. And more so what we'll be looking at is what are going to be the new costs for the consolidated rec district to buy
Right.
those services.
Which is part of where I think we may run into the November vote problem because people are going to ask, well, what's the cost?
Yeah, and
I don't know if we'll have
that'll
that by
be,
then.
that'll be our work, you
To
know.
try and get by that.
We've been trying to get just to the point of a recommendation and.
Yeah.
and-
Right. And then that-
That's why I'm worried about the timing, right?
Once we have it, that's what we're gonna go to town, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
we're gonna really do our best to develop a budget.
And have it.
We're gonna meet with HR services and payroll services and identify, you know, what legal counsel would cost. So we may not have all those numbers completed and hard,
No.
but I think we'll have a good sense. And again, the hope is that the 150 that we've used for the assessment for the school district will help us pay for those services in other ways.
And that work's already, I mean, there's been multiple meetings with HR, finance, IT, just to, even just to identify what those
What the-
services are.
Yeah.
Right, and because we had the conversation with EGRP, how long have you been back on the board?
3, 4
Okay,
years.
so 4 years now?
4 years, 5 years.
I mean, I know some of that research was done back at that time. I mean, the numbers have changed, but where those numbers came from, I think it's still
Well,
the same.
2011.
Yeah, So-
What they did was they took the Essex Junction, had an assessment at CCSU. And rec department, my understanding is it was treated like a fifth school. Because of Act 60 funding, way back when, we had to be very clear about what was school costs and what was municipal costs. So that's why that had to come into play, was
Right.
after Act 60. We had to separate everything out. And so I know when we look at the rec department budget, it's hard for other people outside that haven't been involved of how it played in that assessment. Plus, administration is more than CCSU administration. It's all the administrators like Brad and everybody and their costs over there too. So I think could be misleading if someone said it costs CCSU more money. It depends on what they're looking at in your budget.
right.
You know what I mean? I think they gotta compare apples to apples and not making assumptions.
Okay,
But
have we covered? Well, I can. Does there anyone like to ask any questions or any additional comments? Here?
Sounds interesting.
It definitely is.
You
Just
just
keeps
sat
going.
patiently through 3 meetings. I just wondered if you had something specifically.
The only thing I'm concerned about the vote in November.
Right.
Too, as you are. I think what it is, it's gotta be publicity. I mean, you gotta go out and sell it.
Right, we just have, I mean, and that's what the committee's
My
been
take
talking
is
about.
It's definitely, the municipal route is definitely the way I would want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
I think I told you that.
Yes,
last-
you mentioned that at the last meeting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with it going that municipal route. I just want to make sure we're protecting everybody if the vote, because you might have to do a vote and then do another vote, you do a vote in the community, then they got 30 days that you can re-vote it or recall the question. So it's a little time consuming and it's getting crunch time.
Right.
And one good thing about what I learned from the study committee and the implementation of the schools is we can create, within those articles of agreement, grandfather clauses, moving forward with whatever it is, you protect programs, you protect kids in those situations. I think, there's a way to write those in a way that you preserve that
Right.
which you really want to preserve as you talk about what new possibilities can be moving forward. So that's where, Marla, I'm craving the same thing you are, and that's that specificity that you learn or gain through those articles of agreement.
Yeah.
And for the school boards, I think we did it in 4 months. So once you determine if you're going to move in the municipal governance model, then that work begins, and it's doable. And one of the other things we learned through the process was that you don't wait until, all 18 or 20 articles are developed. You bring people in to the conversation as articles unfold, so that there's a lot of opportunity for involvement and information sharing. So, hopefully we have some good lessons learned and we can replicate how to do that kind of study and, as that wise man said, and sell it. If it's in the best interest, I think that's where your committee has to fall. Because once the Red Study Committee had that passion and commitment to what was in the best interest, then they came together to really make it happen through their articles. And they had all those back and forth agreements and disagreements about how to word things.
I think the biggest thing as you guys move forward with the governance, the biggest thing I find as a community member, I don't like to hear the word sell it. I don't want to feel or hear that people are trying to sell me an idea. I think if you lay out the pros and cons and you do your forums and you go out and talk to the public, then it lays out how it should be. I think when we use the word sell it, it makes people think that we've got an idea and it might not be all that great, and we got to sell it, So the terminology is tricky, I think.
I agree.
But I know, I'm being...
All right. What's next? Okay, so real quick, it's a FYI that, would we like to have, continue having someone take our minutes for us?
Yes.
Unless, do you want to take the minutes like a meeting tonight?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Did we reach
Yeah.
consensus on what?
Yes. Yeah, we hit consensus and then we just kept going with other additional discussion.
All right.
Yeah, so we're all good with having someone continue to take our minutes. Because then in our consent agenda is where we will actually approve
Thank you, Brad.
an individual to do that, which Ben has again said he would be ready
I have to be at Fleming.
and stay awake for the entire meeting, to do. Which is awesome. Thank you, Ben. All right, so,
Ben still wants to do it, right?
yes. So I need also for the consent agenda, let's see. We had added, is the recommendation we received later, is that, let's see.
Yes, I have it here. Thank you.
I mean, I printed it out. I don't know if other folks printed it out.
For professional appointment, for a learning specialist at Summit Street School to replace Regina Sewell. Her name is Julie Aubin, and all the information about the new hires being handed out to you now.
This one's a permanent replacement.
That's correct.
And is that in our consent or is that a separate?
No, that
That's
is
the
the one that's right here, right?
That's the one that's a recommendation for professional
Appointment, right?
I just went,
When the ordinance went out, we didn't have it at that time, so I put a placeholder in.
Okay.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to make sure. I was
just wanna
like,
make sure there wasn't another one that I just missed.
right,
Thank
that's, I had the exact same thought. Okay, great. So, would anyone like to take that on?
The release of
Do you want the consent agenda? You want me to tackle it for you?
Yes, I would love it.
Okay. I move that we approve the consent agenda by approving warrants, approve the meeting minutes of May 9th, 2016, recommend, wait a minute, recommend Julie Aubin for the appointment as the learning specialist at Summit. Then recommend that release of contract for Jennifer Borch, ELL teacher. And that we approve the tax anticipation note bid approval. And it was recommended that the tax anticipation note would be from the Merchants Bank. And that we approve a donation for a stander, an easy stander. And the retail is $5,000. And also that we approve the recording secretary agreement with Ben Dickey.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye? No opposition? Excellent.
Thank you.
We have 4 and a third vote. We have unanimous 4-0. I know we don't have future agenda items on here, but
We have the meeting on the 22nd.
we have a meeting on the 22nd with the trustees and the select board. I can't remember.
That was, from which forum? I think it's EJRP at 6:30.
I think so.
You'll
I just don't have mine in front
probably
of
be
me.
sending out an agenda to us, because we have to warn it.
Yeah, I have more, I'm not sure who's creating that agenda. Question.
Is that something you need to contact the village and create an agenda?
so before you
Yeah.
all take off, I do need a majority of board members to sign the EJ anticipation note.
Oh, right.
Okay.
This will be a shorter walk.
There you go. Thank you.
Do we have to sign these spots or just one spot?
Just one spot, but at least three. All of you would be helpful.
Okay.
And then when they do these, that's another thing they say, they need it to all the names
Oh, for each individual person.
That's fine.
This is for signature for the contract.
I mean, we just consented to it, so. So this is the teacher contract, right? Okay. Excellent. Okay.
This is the signature for Ben Dickey in your agreement.
Not yet, because we haven't signed that yet.
And then we find out,
I'm getting it done now.
not good. Now, the chair has to sign.
Yeah, I
the
gotta sign all
warrants,
those things.
right?
But I can sign them now since we approved the warrants. I don't want to sign them until we approve them.
Are we on
You are a
camera?
good girl. You know that? You were here, such a
we
good girl
adjourn yet?
tonight.
I'll let you fill today.
I don't know
Can't
many
even
kids
figure
your
it
age
out
that can do
All right.
4-hour board
Is
meetings.
there anything else? Wait a minute. Need a majority, so, okay, so here, I'll let you guys sign.
I'm gonna give this back.
Since Patrick can sign, let's get his signature on some stuff.
I don't wanna hold on to that.
All right, unless there is any other board business that has been not covered, we are adjourned.